Imagine discovering that your entire life was built on a lie. That the person you trusted most, your own father, had committed an act so heinous, so unforgivable, that it would shatter your very understanding of good and evil. What would you do if you learned that every Sunday dinner, every family prayer, every moment of your perfect life was tainted by a darkness you never suspected? In 2023, a simple DNA test would tear apart a respected Florida family, transforming a beloved preacher into a man capable of unspeakable violence. This isn't just another story of betrayal. This is a descent into darkness that would leave 2 people dead, 5 children orphaned, and an entire community questioning everything they believed in. Today on True Crime Watch HD, we unravel the shocking story of Pastor Elijah King, a man who went from preaching forgiveness to executing what he called divine vengeance in the most brutal way imaginable. What you're about to witness isn't just a crime story. It's a warning about the monsters that sometimes hide behind the pulpit and the devastating price of uncovering the truth. Before we dive into this chilling tale, take a moment to subscribe to True Crime Watch HD, where we explore the darkest corners of human nature and the thin line between justice and revenge. In a quiet Florida community, Pastor Elijah King stood as a beacon of moral virtue. His passionate sermons drew hundreds of followers, his family appeared picture-perfect, and his dedication to faith seemed unshakable. But beneath this pristine surface lurked a devastating secret, one that would transform a respected preacher into an agent of vengeance. The King family embodied everything their community aspired to be. Elijah, at 42, led his congregation with fire and conviction. His wife Naomi, 38, gracefully balanced her roles as a preacher's wife and mother to their 5 children: Abigail, Elijah Jr., Noah, Sophie, and little Micah. At the heart of their spiritual foundation stood Deacon Henry King, Elijah's father, a man whose influence shaped not just his son's faith, but the entire congregation. Every Sunday, the Kings gathered for dinner at Henry's home. These weren't just meals. They were celebrations of family, faith, and tradition. Scripture readings, heartfelt prayers, and lively discussions filled these evenings with warmth and purpose. For Elijah, these moments represented everything he held dear, until one innocent suggestion shattered their perfect world. It began with a simple school project. 16-year-old Abigail, excited about her genealogy assignment, suggested the family take DNA tests. "We can find out about our ancestry," she said, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Maybe even find distant relatives." The younger children buzzed with excitement, imagining royal bloodlines and exotic heritage. But as Elijah embraced the idea, something shifted in the room. Naomi's smile faltered. Her fingers trembled around her water glass. And Henry, usually quick to support his grandchildren's endeavors, sat in uncharacteristic silence. What would you do if you discovered your entire life was built on a lie? How would you react if the people you trusted most betrayed you in the most profound way imaginable? Let me know in the comments below what you think drives someone to maintain a devastating secret for years. What makes people choose silence over truth, even when that silence destroys lives? When the DNA results arrived weeks later, no one could have predicted how they would rip apart the fabric of this seemingly perfect family. As Elijah scrolled through the report, his world began to unravel. The truth hidden in those results would ignite a chain of events so horrific, they would shake their community to its core. But before we continue with this shocking revelation, let me remind you that True Crime Watch HD brings you the most compelling true crime stories every day. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell to never miss an episode. The DNA results that appeared on Elijah's computer screen that day would change everything. What started as a simple family activity for a school project was about to reveal a truth so devastating, it would destroy the very foundation of the King family. "Wait," Elijah said, leaning closer to the screen, his voice trembling slightly. "This says I'm not a match to any of the kids as their biological father." He forced a laugh, trying to brush it off as a technical error. But across the room, Naomi's reaction told a different story. Her hands gripped the chair until her knuckles turned white, her face drained of all color. Over the next few days, Elijah desperately sought answers. He contacted the genealogy company, certain they had made a mistake. But with each verification, each triple-checked result, the truth became increasingly clear. Not only was he not the father of his children, the DNA markers pointed to someone else within their submitted samples. Someone close. Someone unthinkable. His own father, Henry King. The weight of this revelation crushed Elijah's soul. Suddenly, every memory took on a sinister new meaning. Henry's frequent visits to their home. Naomi's inexplicable silence whenever he was around. Her initial resistance to the DNA test. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, forming a picture too horrifying to comprehend. That evening, Elijah confronted Naomi with the printed results. The living room, once a space of family gatherings and laughter, became the stage for a confession that would tear their world apart. Through tears and broken words, Naomi revealed the dark truth she had carried for years. Early in their marriage, Henry had begun forcing himself on her. Using his position of authority in the church and family, he had created a web of manipulation and fear that trapped Naomi in silence. The abuse continued for years, resulting in all 5 of their children. "I didn't know how to stop it," Naomi whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to destroy you, Elijah." Think about that for a moment. Everything Elijah had built his life upon, his marriage, his children, his faith, his very identity, was revealed as a carefully constructed lie. The man who had taught him about morality, who had shaped his understanding of right and wrong, had committed the ultimate betrayal. What would you do in Elijah's position? How does someone process a betrayal of this magnitude? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As Elijah sat alone in his car that night, the weight of these revelations pressed down on him like a physical force. Hours passed as he drove aimlessly through the empty streets of their quiet Florida town, his mind racing with memories now tainted by knowledge of this horrific deception. The Sunday dinners, the scripture readings, the proud moments watching his children, no, his father's children, grow up. Each memory twisted like a knife in his heart, transforming his pain into something darker, more dangerous. But what happened next would shock even the most hardened true crime followers. Elijah's response to this betrayal would transform him from a respected religious leader into something else entirely. A man driven to commit acts so horrific, they would send shockwaves through their entire community. Remember to subscribe to True Crime Watch HD and hit that notification bell to catch the next part of this shocking story. Our channel brings you the most compelling true crime cases, diving deep into the psychology behind these devastating events. As dawn broke over the quiet Florida town, Elijah King's transformation from a man of God to an instrument of vengeance was already taking shape. The peaceful lake where he had parked his car offered no solace, only a mirror to the darkness growing within him. Years of preaching forgiveness dissolved in the face of an unforgivable truth. When Elijah finally returned home, an eerie calm had settled over him. His children, the innocent products of this betrayal, were already at school, unaware that their world was about to shatter completely. Naomi sat alone in the living room, her tear-streaked face a testament to the sleepless night she had endured. The scene that unfolded next would forever haunt the investigators who later processed it. Elijah entered the room silently, a kitchen knife concealed in his grip. The weapon, later recovered by crime scene investigators, would become evidence of how quickly faith can turn to fury. "Elijah," Naomi whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "I know you're hurt, but we can—" "Don't," he interrupted, his voice carrying an iciness that silenced her immediately. "Don't you dare try to fix this with words. You've destroyed everything, Naomi. Everything." What followed was a scene of unimaginable violence. Naomi's desperate attempts to explain, to seek forgiveness, were cut short by Elijah's rage. Each thrust of the knife represented years of lies, betrayal, and humiliation. The once pristine carpet, where their children had played and grown up, became stained with evidence of their family's tragic end. But Elijah's vengeance was far from complete. His father, Henry King, the architect of this destruction, still sat in his home, unaware that his son was coming to deliver what he believed was divine justice. The drive to Henry's house was short, but in those few minutes, Elijah's mind raced with memories. Sunday dinners, scripture readings, father-son talks, each memory now poisoned by the knowledge of Henry's true nature. The Bible that had always sat on Henry's dining room table would become a silent witness to what happened next. When Elijah burst through his father's door, he found Henry exactly where he expected, sitting at his dining table, Bible open, as if he had any right to seek guidance from those sacred pages. The confrontation that followed would shock even the most seasoned true crime investigators. "Explain this," Elijah demanded, throwing the DNA results onto the table. Henry's attempt to maintain innocence only fueled his son's rage. The same hands that had once blessed his congregation now became instruments of brutal retribution. What happened in that dining room would later be described by investigators as one of the most brutal crime scenes they had ever encountered. Elijah's attack was not just about ending his father's life. It was about destroying the very essence of the man who had destroyed his world. The level of violence exhibited that day raises profound questions about human nature. What drives a person to cross the line from righteous anger to savage revenge? At what point does justice become cruelty? When police arrived at Henry's house, responding to neighbors' reports of horrifying screams, they found a scene that would haunt them for years to come. Elijah sat calmly on the front porch, his clothes soaked in blood, his father's Bible still clutched in his hands. "It's done," he told the approaching officers, his voice eerily calm. "God's justice has been served." But the horror wasn't over. Elijah's casual mention of Naomi's fate sent officers racing to his home, where they discovered the full scope of his vengeful rampage. Two crime scenes, connected by a thread of betrayal and religious conviction, turned to madness. If you're finding this story as compelling as it is disturbing, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Watch HD. We delve deep into cases that challenge our understanding of human nature and the thin line between justice and revenge. The aftermath of Elijah King's rampage sent shockwaves through the community. The same church pews where he had once preached forgiveness now filled with horrified congregants struggling to reconcile the man they knew with the monster he had become. The investigation that followed would reveal layers of deception that had festered beneath the surface of their perfect religious community for years. Detective Sarah Martinez, the lead investigator on the case, would later describe the King family tragedy as the kind of case that makes you question everything you think you know about human nature. The evidence collected from both crime scenes painted a picture of methodical violence that suggested Elijah's actions weren't just a momentary loss of control. They were the culmination of a complete psychological break. The level of precision in these murders, Martinez noted in her official report, suggests someone who had completely disconnected from their previous identity. The religious symbolism at both scenes wasn't accidental. It was a message. The interrogation room footage, later released during the trial, showed a chilling transformation. Elijah sat calmly, still wearing his blood-stained clothes, and provided a detailed confession with the same measured tone he once used to deliver his sermons. He described each murder with clinical detachment, as if recounting events that had happened to someone else. "They corrupted everything," he told investigators, his voice steady and clear. "My marriage, my children, my faith." The truth needed to come out, and justice needed to be served. When asked if he felt remorse, Elijah's response sent chills through the interrogation room. "God's will has been done." The evidence processing team spent weeks documenting every detail. The blood spatter analysis revealed that Naomi had tried to escape, leaving tragic evidence of her final moments. Defensive wounds on her hands told a story of desperate survival attempts. The crime scene photos, too graphic for public release, showed how personal and intimate the violence had been. At Henry's house, investigators found a scene that spoke to an even deeper level of rage. The brutality of the attack suggested something beyond mere revenge. It was an attempt to completely destroy the man who had betrayed him. The religious artifacts scattered around the crime scene, many splattered with blood, created a macabre tableau that seasoned investigators struggled to process. What drives a person to plan such elaborate revenge? Is there a point where betrayal becomes so profound that it justifies the darkest of human actions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The impact on the community was devastating. The 5 King children, now orphaned and carrying the burden of their terrible heritage, faced an uncertain future. The eldest, Abigail, whose innocent genealogy project had unveiled this tragedy, would later require extensive therapy to deal with the guilt of having initiated the chain of events. The church congregation split apart, with some members defending Elijah's actions as justified revenge, while others saw them as the ultimate betrayal of everything their faith stood for. The schism would eventually lead to the church's closure, another casualty in the wake of the King family tragedy. As the case moved toward trial, the legal teams faced unprecedented challenges. How do you prosecute a man who had discovered such a profound betrayal? How do you defend actions so brutal while acknowledging the trauma that triggered them? The prosecution would need to convince a jury that regardless of the provocation, Elijah's response had crossed an unforgivable line. The defense team, led by prominent attorney James Bradley, faced the difficult task of humanizing Elijah's actions without excusing them. What we have here, Bradley would argue in his opening statement, is a man who discovered that his entire life was a carefully constructed lie. Everything he believed in, everything he built his identity around, was destroyed in an instant. The trial would attract national media attention, with legal experts debating the fine line between justified rage and premeditated murder. Psychiatric evaluations revealed that Elijah had experienced what experts called a catastrophic break from reality, triggered by the complete destruction of his worldview. The prosecution, however, would focus on the calculated nature of the murders. They pointed to the methodical way Elijah had carried out his revenge, the careful planning, and his calm demeanor afterward. This wasn't a crime of passion, prosecutor Maria Thompson argued. This was calculated revenge, executed with precision by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. For those who have just joined us on True Crime Watch HD, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations of cases that challenge our understanding of justice, revenge, and human nature. Our next video will explore another shocking case that blurs the line between victim and perpetrator. The trial of Elijah King would become one of the most widely discussed cases in Florida's criminal history. The courtroom, packed daily with journalists, former congregation members, and true crime enthusiasts, became a stage for examining the depths of human betrayal and the limits of justifiable revenge. Dr. Rebecca Sullivan, a forensic psychiatrist who evaluated Elijah, provided compelling testimony about his mental state. What we see here, she explained to the transfixed jury, is someone who experienced what we call narcissistic injury on a catastrophic scale. His entire identity, as a father, a husband, and a man of God, was destroyed in an instant. The prosecution team, led by the formidable Maria Thompson, systematically dismantled any attempt to justify the murders. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she argued in her closing statement, while we can understand Mr. King's pain, we cannot condone his response. The level of violence, the methodical nature of these kills, the brutal mutilation, these are not the actions of someone temporarily insane. These are the calculated moves of a man who chose revenge over justice. The jury's deliberation lasted 5 days, an unusually long time for what seemed like a straightforward case. Later interviews with jury members revealed the complexity of their discussions. "We all felt for him," one juror anonymously shared. "How do you process that kind of betrayal?" But the brutality of his response. There was no way to justify that. When the verdict was finally delivered, Elijah stood motionless, his face betraying no emotion. Guilty on all counts. The judge, acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances while upholding the law, sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the story of the King family tragedy didn't end with Elijah's sentencing. The ripple effects continued to impact lives throughout the community. The 5 King children, now in separate foster homes, faced years of therapy and rehabilitation. Abigail, the eldest, would later write an anonymous blog post that went viral. "My innocent curiosity destroyed my family. How do you live with that kind of guilt?" The church community never fully recovered. The building where Elijah once preached was eventually sold and converted into a community center. Former congregation members speak of a lingering trauma, a collective wound that refuses to heal. "We trusted him," one former deacon shared. "We trusted them all." How do you rebuild faith after something like this? Perhaps the most chilling aspect of this case is the series of letters Elijah began writing from prison. In carefully penned correspondence, he maintained that his actions were divinely justified. "God's justice works in mysterious ways," he wrote in one letter. "Sometimes the shepherd must cull the wolves, even if they wear sheep's clothing." What does this case tell us about human nature? About the thin line between justice and revenge? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Prison psychologists continue to study Elijah's case, fascinated by his unwavering belief in the righteousness of his actions. Dr. Marcus Chen, who conducted multiple interviews with Elijah, noted, "He's created a narrative where he's not the villain, but the hand of divine justice." It's a powerful example of how the human mind can rationalize even the most extreme actions. The King family tragedy forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about forgiveness, justice, and the human capacity for violence. It reminds us that sometimes the most horrifying monsters aren't strangers lurking in the shadows, but the people we trust most, hiding behind masks of righteousness. Today, the house where Henry King met his violent end stands empty, a silent monument to the dangers of secrets and lies. The King children, now adults, have chosen to remain anonymous, carrying the burden of their family's dark legacy. And in a maximum security prison, Elijah King continues to read his Bible, convinced that his bloody revenge was an act of divine will. Before we end today's episode, if you found this story as compelling as it is disturbing, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Watch HD. Our channel brings you the most in-depth coverage of cases that challenge our understanding of human nature, justice, and the price of betrayal. Remember, sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones kept by those closest to us. The King family tragedy stands as a chilling reminder that trust, once shattered, can lead even the most righteous down a path of unimaginable darkness. This has been True Crime Watch HD. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and we'll see you in our next video.